things that happens about when there's a debate about British identity, which we've been having off and on for the last few years in more or less contentious ways and heated ways, is that people come along and they say, well, the monarchy is essential because it gives the British people a sense of identity, a sense of history, continuity and stability. Now, from my point of view, the absolute opposite is true. And where people see stability and continuity, I see fear and paralysis. And it's amazing to me that for 300 years we put all our eggs in one family, in one basket, and assume that this single set of people are capable of accommodating everything that happens in this country, all its history, and reflecting who we are as we change, what we become. And people say, oh, but if we got rid of them, what will we get in their place? As though it's a problem in a country with more than 60 million people. I think we could probably find somebody who could do the job, and maybe do it a little bit better than the present monarch. But this argument is peculiar because it shows a kind of fear, a lack of trust in ourselves. And if we don't trust ourselves to elect a head of state, how on earth can we trust ourselves to elect governments? We elect governments who have extraordinary powers over us. They have the power to take our money in taxes. They have the power to send young men and women overseas to die in the name of the country. They devolve powers. They pass acts of parliament which allow councils to take children into care, to take them away from their families. We're confident that we can choose politicians to do all that, and yet we're not confident that we can choose a head of state, which is a largely ceremonial and representative function. Now, if we're so lacking in confidence that we can't do that, that's actually an argument for not voting at all. We might as well pick another family, just randomly. I mean, this time last year, these people called Clegg were very, very popular. So why don't we have the Windsors as monarchs and the Cleggs as hereditary prime ministers? And Nick Clegg could do the job, and in the very, very unlikely situation that he wasn't very good at it, in maybe 30 or 40 years, he'll die, and we could have a little Clegg, and the next Clegg might be better. Give his son a go. But there is a serious point here, which is that who we have as head of state says something about a country's identity and its aspirations. And the election of Barack Obama was a very, very significant symbolic moment in American history. This was a country which had actually had a civil war, an incredibly terrible civil war over the question of slavery. People prepared to die to keep other human beings enslaved. It had a terrible history of segregation and racial discrimination. And 50 years after the civil rights movement, the American people chose a black person as head of state. Now, that may not reflect a country which doesn't discriminate anymore. It doesn't reflect a country where there is absolute equality. It does reflect a country where the aspirations are to be that kind of country which has equality. In this country, we can't have a black head of state. We can't have a Jewish head of state. We certainly can't, by law, have a Catholic head of state. And we're not going to, while this family's here, going to have an openly gay head of state. Now, I'm not arguing that we should have a kind of white feminist head of state. What I'm arguing, I don't necessarily want it to reflect me, but I think that all of these people have a right to be represented. And if we got a President Major or a President Beckham, and personally I think Victoria's more stylish, so I'd rather it was her than David, but if it didn't work, after 5 or 7 years, we throw them out and we find somebody else, and I think that would be part of the maturing process. Now, what we've got at the moment is an institution which actually militates against an idea of universal human rights. I was listening to The World at 1 today, and a police commander called Christine Jones was asked, is it going to be okay for people to protest against the royal wedding on Friday? And what she said was, she actually suggested that the Metropolitan Police may use the Public Order Act to take down any placards which protest against the royal family on Friday. And she said there are 364 other days of the year when people can come to London and demonstrate. And frankly, it's not appropriate on the day of the royal wedding for people to come to London with that intent. This institution actually is authoritarian, it's medieval, it completely flies in the face of the notion of universal human rights, and I think we can do better.